I'm Sharon Mitchell, 37 years old, and 3 years ago I gave up everything for my family. I quit my job managing a retail store to care for my mom, who is battling chronic diabetes. I paid her medical bills, covered the mortgage on their house, and never asked for a thank you. She promised me her heirloom necklace platinum with a pearl pendant when I was just 15, a symbol of her love. I held on to that promise. But at our family dinner in Atlanta, everything changed. My dad raised his glass, his voice booming, to the real daughter, the one who's always here for us. Everyone cheered. Then my mom handed my sister that necklace, my necklace. She said my sister deserved it more. I stood there frozen, gripping my napkin. No one noticed. I didn't cry or yell. I just gathered my kids, nodded to my husband, and walked out. A week later, the bank called them and panic set in. What would you do if you were in my situation when even your own family turned their back? Leave a comment and share your thoughts. That Sunday, we sat around my parents' dining table in Atlanta. The air felt warm, almost cozy, like the family dinners we used to have when I was a kid. My sister sat across from me, her smile tight like she knew something I didn't. My husband William was next to me chatting about football with Dad, while my kids giggled over their plates. I tried to join in, forcing a laugh, but my chest felt heavy. I'd spent 3 years putting my life on hold for Mom, quitting my job, paying her medical bills, keeping their mortgage afloat. I never asked for praise, but I thought they saw me. I thought they knew. Then Dad stood, his glass raised high. To the real daughter, he said, his voice booming with pride, the one who's always here for us, who takes care of everything. My stomach twisted. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at my sister. Everyone clapped, my cousins, my aunts, even Mom. I sat there gripping my fork, my face burning. Then Mom reached into her pocket and pulled out the necklace platinum with a pearl pendant that caught the light. The one she promised me when I was 15, sitting on her bed after her first hospital scare. This is for you. One day, she'd said, her hand warm on mine. You're my rock, Sharon. Now she leaned across the table and handed it to my sister. Debra deserves this, Mom said, her voice soft but firm. She's been here taking care of us. Debra's eyes lit up, her fingers brushing the pearl like it was always hers. I waited for someone to correct Mom, to say it was a mistake. No one did. My aunts nodded, my cousins smiled, and Dad took another sip of his wine. I felt invisible, like I was shrinking into the chair. My kids were still giggling, oblivious. William glanced at me, his brow furrowed, but I shook my head. I couldn't speak. If I opened my mouth, I'd scream, or worse, cry. I wouldn't give them that. I pushed my chair back, the legs scraping against the floor. We're leaving, I said, my voice low but steady. William didn't argue. He gathered the kids who whined about missing dessert, and we walked out. The door clicked shut behind us, and the night air hit my face like a slap. I didn't look back. In the car, with the kids buckled in and William silent beside me, I replayed Mom's words. Debra deserves this. After all I'd done, 3 years of late-night hospital runs, paying their bills, keeping their house from foreclosure. I thought of the necklace, that promise from when I was 15, when Mom said I was her rock. It wasn't just a piece of jewelry. It was her word, her love, and she gave it to someone else. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white. I'd been their safety net for years, wiring money for the mortgage, covering Mom's insulin prescriptions, never asking for a cent back. I did it because I believed in family, in loyalty. But loyalty goes both ways, and they'd just shown me where I stood. In that moment, something snapped. I wasn't going to beg for their respect. I wasn't going to keep pouring myself into people who didn't see me. By the time we pulled into our driveway, I'd made up my mind. I was done carrying them. The next morning, I logged into the bank app and stopped the automatic transfers to Mom and Dad's account. No more mortgage payments, no more bill coverage. I didn't call to explain. I didn't send a text. I just clicked cancel and closed the laptop. My hands shook, not with fear, but with clarity. I'd given them everything, my time, my money, my heart, and they handed my sister a necklace that was meant for me. If they thought Debra was their real daughter, she could take care of them now. For the first time in years, I wasn't running to fix their problems. I wasn't their rock anymore. And maybe I thought that was okay. A week later, my father called, his voice shaking with panic. "Sharon, the bank says the mortgage is late." Dad's words came out fast, almost accusatory. "What did you do? You've been handling the payments?" I stood in my kitchen, phone pressed to my ear, my coffee going cold. The bank had sent a delinquency notice because I'd stopped the automatic transfers after that dinner. I took a deep breath, my pulse racing. "Dad," I said, my voice steady, "I'm not paying anymore. You said Debra's taking care of you. Let her handle it." There was a long pause. He sputtered, "You can't do this to us." I hung up my hands, trembling, not from guilt, but from a quiet, burning anger. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the phone. My mind flicked back to that Sunday, the way Dad's glass gleamed as he toasted Debra, the way Mom's hands moved so easily to give her my necklace. I'd spent 3 years juggling hospital visits and bills, thinking it meant something. But they didn't see it. They saw Debra, who lived 10 minutes away and dropped by with coffee once a month. The memory stung, but I pushed it down. I wasn't going to let it consume me. I had my own family, William, my kids to focus on. Helping Mom and Dad had been my choice, but so was stopping. I wasn't their bank account anymore. 2 days later, Mom called. Her voice was sharp, not the soft tone she used to get her way. "Sharon, how could you let this happen?" she snapped. "The bank's threatening to take the house. You know I'm sick. You know we depend on you." I clenched my jaw, fighting the urge to yell. She hadn't mentioned the dinner, the necklace, or the years I'd carried them. "Mom," I said, "I've done enough. Debra's your real daughter. Ask her." She gasped, then went silent. I ended the call, my heart pounding. I felt raw, like I'd ripped off a bandage, but I didn't regret it. They'd made their choice, and now I was making mine. That same week, I got a text from my cousin Douglas. "Hey, just a heads up," he wrote. "I saw a delinquency notice for your parents' house at the bank. Looks bad." Douglas worked as an engineer and sometimes handled paperwork for his firm's accounts. He wasn't close to Mom and Dad, but he'd always been straight with me. I thanked him and asked for details. The notice confirmed what I'd expected: the mortgage hadn't been paid since I stopped the transfers. The bank was moving toward foreclosure, and Mom and Dad were scrambling. I should have felt sorry for them, but I didn't. They'd taken me for granted too long. Then I heard Debra had moved into Mom and Dad's house. My aunt called William to complain, saying Debra was taking charge and promising to fix everything. I could hear her voice in my head, smooth and confident, saying, "Don't worry, I've got this." It didn't add up. Debra had never paid a bill for them in her life. She worked odd jobs, selling jewelry online, picking up shifts at a boutique, but she wasn't exactly rolling in money. Why was she suddenly playing the hero? I remembered her smile at the dinner, the way she touched that necklace like it was a trophy. Something felt off, like she was working an angle I couldn't see yet. I decided to dig deeper. I called the bank to check the status of Mom and Dad's accounts using my access from when I managed their payments. The representative was hesitant, but confirmed the mortgage was 2 months behind, with late fees piling up. I asked about other accounts, fishing for anything unusual. "There's been some activity on your mother's credit card," she said, "but I can't share details without her consent." That was enough to spark my suspicion. Debra was living with them now, with full access to their finances. If she was taking care of everything, what exactly was she doing? I spent the next few days pulling records I could access: old bank statements, payment confirmations I'd kept from years of helping out. I noticed small discrepancies: a withdrawal here, a transfer there. Nothing huge, but enough to make me wonder. Debra had always been good at talking her way into things: jobs, favors, even that necklace. Was she talking her way into Mom and Dad's money too? I didn't have proof yet, but I wasn't going to let it go. I sent a text to my lawyer asking how to request a formal audit of their accounts. I wasn't just angry anymore, I was determined to find out what Debra was up to. 3 weeks after the dinner, my mother left a voicemail, her tone softer than usual. Sharon, honey, Mom said, her voice almost pleading. I miss the kids. Can we talk? We didn't mean to upset you. I replayed it twice, sitting on my couch, the phone heavy in my hand. Her words sounded sweet, like the mom who used to braid my hair when I was little, but I wasn't a child anymore, and I wasn't falling for it. She hadn't mentioned the necklace or the years I'd spent keeping their lives together. She hadn't even apologized for what happened at the dinner. I texted back, I need space, Mom. Please respect that. My fingers hovered over the send button before I pressed it. I felt a pang of guilt, but it faded fast. They'd made me feel like nothing now. They wanted my kids to fill the silence. A few days later, I got a call from the family's estate planner. I'd worked with her years ago to set up Mom's medical directives back when I was paying her hospital bills. Sharon, she said, her voice tense. Your parents are trying to change their financial arrangements. They want to remove you as a co-signer on their accounts and power of attorney. My heart sank. The accounts were tied to the house, the same one I'd kept out of foreclosure with my own money. The power of attorney let me manage Mom's medical decisions when she was too sick to do it herself. I pressed the phone tighter to my ear. Who's taking over? I asked, already knowing the answer. Debra, she said. Of course. Debra, who'd never paid a bill, who'd waltzed in with her fake smiles and walked out with my necklace. I hung up, my mind racing. This wasn't just about the necklace anymore. They were trying to cut me out completely to hand everything to Debra. I thought of Dad's toast, his proud, real daughter's speech, and Mom's hands passing her that pearl pendant. They didn't just betray me, they were rewriting my place in the family. I opened my laptop and pulled up the bank records I'd saved from when I managed their payments. The numbers stared back at me, a history of my sacrifices: $200 a month for the mortgage, $300 for Mom's insulin, thousands more for hospital stays. I'd done it all, and now they were giving Debra control. My chest tightened, not with sadness, but with a cold, sharp resolve. I wasn't going to let this happen. That evening, I got an email from my best friend Evelyn. We'd known each other since high school, and she always had my back. Check this out. Her message read with a string of forwarded emails attached. I opened them, my eyes scanning the screen. They were receipts from Mom's credit card sent to Evelyn by a mutual friend who worked at the bank. The charges were recent: $800 at Target for clothes, $200 at Nordstrom for a handbag, $500 for a weekend trip to Orlando. I recognized the pattern immediately. Debra had been living with Mom and Dad for 2 weeks with access to their accounts. These weren't Mom's purchases. She hadn't left the house in months, and she didn't shop at Nordstrom. Debra was spending their money like it was her own. I leaned back, my hands shaking with anger. I pictured Debra at the dinner, her fingers brushing that pearl pendant, her smug, I've got this attitude when she moved in. She wasn't just taking my place, she was taking their money. I forwarded the emails to my lawyer, a woman I'd hired last week, after Douglas's text about the delinquency notice. Can we use this? I wrote. I think Debra's stealing from Mom. My lawyer replied within the hour. This is serious. We'll need more evidence, but we can start building a case. I felt a surge of purpose, like a fire catching in dry grass. Debra thought she could manipulate everyone, but I wasn't going to let her win. I spent the next few days calling contacts, people who'd seen Mom and Dad's finances over the years, a cousin who'd helped with their taxes, a neighbor who'd overheard Debra bragging about her new life. Every conversation added a piece to the puzzle. Debra had been dropping hints, saying she was taking care of the family while buying herself clothes and plane tickets. I felt sick, not just for me, but for Mom and Dad. They'd chosen her, trusted her, and she was bleeding them dry. But I wasn't their savior anymore. I was done begging for their respect. This wasn't about saving them, it was about holding Debra accountable. By the end of the week, I'd gathered enough to know I was on the right track. The emails from Evelyn were just the start. I told my lawyer to move forward with a formal request to audit Mom's accounts. Debra had crossed a line, and I was ready to fight back, not for the necklace, not for their approval, but for the truth. A month later, a lawyer's letter landed in my mailbox. The envelope was crisp official, with a return address from a law firm in downtown Atlanta. I tore it open, my hands steady but my heart pounding. The words hit me like a slap. Debra had filed a lawsuit against me, claiming I'd coerced Mom into signing over part of the house to me. The accusation was absurd. She said I'd manipulated a sick woman to steal her assets. Me, the one who'd paid their mortgage for years, who'd kept their house from foreclosure. I stood in my living room, the letter crumpled in my fist, my anger rising like a tide. Debra wasn't just taking my place, she was trying to paint me as the villain. I called Evelyn, my voice tight. "She's suing me," I said. "Debra's saying I forced Mom to give me the house." Evelyn didn't hesitate. "Check your email," she said. I found something. I opened my laptop, and there it was, a string of text messages Debra had sent to a mutual friend, forwarded to Evelyn. In them, Debra bragged about handling Mom and Dad, saying she'd convinced them I was too busy with my kids to care about their finances. "They trust me now," she wrote, "and I'm making sure it stays that way." Another message gloated about how easy it was to get Mom to sign papers. I read the words over and over, my blood boiling. Debra wasn't just spending their money, she was manipulating them to cut me out. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to focus. Anger wouldn't help me now. I needed a plan. I called my lawyer, a sharp woman named Karen, who'd been helping me since I'd learned about Debra's credit card charges. "Send me the lawsuit and those texts," Karen said, her tone calm but firm. "We'll counter this. Do you have any proof of your contributions to the house I did?" Years ago, when Mom and Dad were drowning in debt, I'd paid off a chunk of their mortgage, enough to claim a 30% stake in the property. The paperwork was in a folder in my office, signed and notarized. I scanned the documents and sent them to Karen, my hands shaking, not with fear but with a fierce clarity. Debra thought she could rewrite history, but I had the receipts. The next day, I met Karen at her office. She spread the papers across her desk: my loan agreements, bank statements showing years of mortgage payments, even emails from Mom thanking me for covering their bills. "This shows you've been financially tied to the house since 2019, Karen said, tapping the documents. "Debra's claim that you coerced your mother doesn't hold up. But we need to prove she's the one acting in bad faith." I nodded, thinking of the credit card receipts Evelyn had sent: the $800 at Target, the $2,500 $500 Orlando trip. "What about the audit I requested?" I asked. Karen leaned forward. "It's in motion. We've asked the court for a forensic accountant to review your parents' accounts. If Debra's been misusing their money, we'll find it." That night, I sat with William at our kitchen table, the kids asleep upstairs. I told him about the lawsuit, the texts, the audit. He reached for my hand, his grip steady. "You're doing the right thing," he said. "Debra's gone too far." I squeezed his hand, grateful for his support, but my mind was racing. I wasn't just angry at Debra, I was furious at Mom and Dad for letting this happen. They'd trusted her, signed over their accounts, and now stood by while she dragged me to court. I thought of Mom's voicemail, her soft, "I miss the kids," and Dad's silence since our last call. They weren't just complicit, they were enabling her. The next week, Evelyn called with more. "I talked to our friend at the bank," she said. She pulled some records off the record. "There's another $1,000 charge on your mom's card, some jewelry store in Buckhead. It's recent, after Debra moved in." I clenched my phone, my jaw tight. Debra wasn't stopping. She was living in their house, using their money, and now trying to take mine. I forwarded the new information to Karen, my resolve hardening. This wasn't about the house anymore. It was about exposing Debra for who she was. I spent hours combing through my own records, cross-referencing every payment I'd made for Mom and Dad. I found a receipt from 2021 for a $5,000 hospital bill I'd covered, another for $2,000 in property taxes. Every document was a reminder of what I'd given up: my career, my savings, my time. And Debra, she'd given them nothing but lies. I sent everything to Karen, along with a note: "I want the audit to cover every transaction since Debra moved in. She's not getting away with this." My lawyer replied, "We're building a strong case." Stay focused. By the end of the month, I felt a strange calm. The anger was still there, but it was sharp controlled like a blade I'd honed. I wasn't fighting for Mom and Dad's approval. I'd stopped needing that the moment I walked out of that dinner. I was fighting for the truth for my kids, for the life I'd built. Debra had underestimated me, and that was her mistake. I was ready to face her in court, to lay out every piece of evidence, and to show the world who the real manipulator was. One morning, the accountant called with news I'd suspected. "Sharon," he said, his voice clipped and professional. "The audit's done. Your sister withdrew $14,000 from your mother's accounts over the past 2 months." I gripped the phone, my heart racing, as he listed the charges: $3,000 on designer clothes from Nordstrom, $2,800 on electronics from Best Buy, $2,500 for the Orlando trip I already knew about, and thousands more on smaller purchases, jewelry, dining, even a spa day. I felt a rush of relief, like a knot in my chest had loosened. The evidence was clear, undeniable. But as he spoke, a heavier feeling settled in. Mom had no idea. She'd trusted Debra, handed her the keys to their finances, and Debra had taken everything she could. I sat at my desk, the accountant's report open on my laptop. The numbers stared back at me, each one a betrayal. I thought of Mom, frail and trusting, signing papers because Debra said it was for the family. I'd spent years keeping her safe, paying for her insulin, her hospital stays, and now she couldn't see what was right in front of her. It hurt, a deep, aching pain, but I pushed it aside. Grief wouldn't help me now. I had to focus. I forwarded the report to my lawyer, Karen, with a note. "This is what we've been waiting for. Let's use it." She called me within the hour. "This is solid," she said. "We'll submit it to the court with everything else you've got." I'd been building a file for weeks. The credit card receipts from Evelyn, $800 at Target Hall and $200 at Nordstrom, were just the start. I'd gotten my hands on a security video from the bank showing Debra withdrawing cash from Mom's account at an ATM in Buckhead. The footage was grainy, but it was her same jacket, same smug tilt of her head. I added the text messages Evelyn had sent where Debra bragged about convincing Mom and Dad to trust her. Every piece was a brick in the case we were building. I emailed it all to Karen, my hands steady but my mind racing. This wasn't just about the money, it was about proving who Debra really was. Karen and I met the next day to prepare for the court date. She spread the evidence across her conference table: the audit report, the receipts, the video, the texts. "Debra's lawsuit claims you coerced your mother," she said, "but this shows she's been exploiting them. We'll counter her claim and file for damages." I nodded, my jaw tight. The thought of facing Debra in court didn't scare me, it fueled me. I'd spent too long being the one who fixed things, who stayed quiet. Now I was ready to fight. Karen walked me through our strategy. We'd present the audit to disprove Debra's accusations, then use the evidence to show her financial abuse. "It's a strong case," she said. "Just be ready for her to push back." That evening, my phone buzzed with a text from Debra. "Sharon, can we talk?" It read. "This is getting out of hand. Let's just drop it." I stared at the screen, my anger flaring. She'd sued me, accused me of stealing, and now she wanted to drop it. I could hear her voice in my head, smooth and manipulative, like at the dinner when she took my necklace. I typed back, "You made your choice. See you in court." I hit send, my heart pounding but my resolve firm. Debra wasn't going to talk her way out of this. She'd underestimated me, and I wasn't backing down. William sat with me that night, the kids asleep upstairs. "You okay?" he asked, his eyes searching mine. I nodded, but the truth was more complicated. I felt lighter with the audit in hand, like I'd finally caught Debra in her lies. But the pain lingered. Mom and Dad had let this happen. They'd chosen her, believed her, even after everything I'd done. I thought of Mom's voicemail, her soft plea to see the kids, and Dad's silence since our last call. They were blind to Debra's actions, and that cut deeper than I wanted to admit. I leaned into William, grateful for his steady presence. "I just want this over," I said. He squeezed my hand. "You're almost there." Over the next week, I worked closely with Karen. We refined our court filings, double-checked every document, and rehearsed my testimony. I'd have to explain my contributions to the house, 30% ownership from my payments, years of covering their bills. I'd have to face Debra, Mom, maybe even Dad, and lay out the truth. It wasn't easy picturing their faces in that courtroom, but I kept my focus on the evidence. The audit was our cornerstone, backed by the video and texts. Debra's lies were unraveling, and I was ready to show the court what she'd done. 2 days before the hearing, Debra called again. "Sharon, please," she said, her voice shaky. "I didn't mean for this. Let's settle this as a family." I laughed, a cold, bitter sound. "You sued me, Debra," I said. "You don't get to play the family card now." I hung up, my hands trembling but my mind clear. This wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for the truth, for my kids, for the life I'd built despite their betrayal. The courtroom in Atlanta was quieter than I expected. The hum of the air conditioner and the shuffle of papers filled the space as I sat beside my lawyer, Karen, my hands folded tightly in my lap. Debra was across the room, her posture stiff, her eyes darting to the judge. She wore a tailored blazer, trying to look polished, but I could see the tension in her jaw. The judge called the case, and Debra's lawyer stood first, claiming Mom had gifted her the money she'd spent, $14,000 on clothes, electronics, and that Orlando trip. "My client acted with her mother's blessing," he said, his voice smooth. I clenched my fists, resisting the urge to shout. A gift? Mom hadn't bought herself new clothes in years. Karen rose, her presence commanding. She presented our evidence with precision: the forensic accountant's report detailing Debra's withdrawals, the bank video showing her at the ATM, the text messages where she bragged about manipulating Mom and Dad. Then came the voicemail from Mom, played for the court. Her voice thanking me for paying her hospital bills years ago, calling me her lifeline. The room stayed silent as the recording ended, but I felt Debra's glare burning into me. Karen closed by showing my payments for the house, 30% ownership, documented and notarized. My client didn't coerce anyone, she said. She protected her parents while the defendant exploited them. The judge took less than an hour to decide. "The evidence is clear," she said, her tone firm. The defendant, Debra Lynn, misused her mother's funds without consent. She ordered Debra to repay $17,000, including interest and court fees. A murmur rippled through the room, but I kept my eyes on the judge, my heart pounding with a strange mix of triumph and exhaustion. Debra's face went pale, her hands gripping the table. I'd won, but the victory felt heavy, like a stone in my chest. I glanced at Mom and Dad seated behind Debra. They hadn't spoken a word during the hearing. Mom stared at her hands, her lips pressed tight. Dad looked straight ahead, his jaw set, avoiding my gaze. They hadn't defended Debra, but they hadn't supported me either. Their silence was louder than any argument we'd ever had. I thought of the dinner, Dad's toast to the real daughter, Mom's hands giving Debra my necklace. Even now, with the truth laid bare, they couldn't face me. The distance between us felt like a chasm, one I'd never cross again. As we left the courtroom, Karen squeezed my arm. "You did it," she said. "We exposed her." I nodded, forcing a smile, but inside I felt hollow. I'd fought for the truth, and I'd won. The court had seen Debra for what she was, a manipulator who'd taken advantage of our parents. But the cost was my family. Mom and Dad's refusal to look at me confirmed what I'd feared: they'd chosen her, even after everything. I thought of my kids waiting at home with William, and that kept me grounded. They were my family now, the one I'd built, the one that mattered. Outside, the Atlanta sun was harsh, glaring off the courthouse steps. Debra lingered near the entrance, her lawyer gone. For a moment, I thought she might approach me, maybe plead again like she had in her texts. But she turned away, her shoulders slumped, and disappeared into the crowd. I stood there, the weight of the verdict settling in. $17,000 was more than I'd expected, but it didn't erase the years I'd given Mom and Dad, the sacrifices they'd ignored. I felt like I'd won a battle but lost something bigger. When I got home, William was waiting. "How'd it go?" he asked, his voice soft. I showed him the court order, the judge's signature stark against the page. He hugged me, but I couldn't shake the emptiness. I'd proven my point, exposed Debra's lies, but Mom and Dad's silence lingered like a bruise. I sat on the couch, the kids' laughter echoing from upstairs, and wondered if I'd ever hear from my parents again. The victory was mine, but it came with a void I hadn't anticipated, one shaped like the family I used to know. 4 months after the trial, I made my final move. With the courts ruling in my favor, I reclaimed full ownership of my parents' house, leveraging my 30% stake and the judge's order. I sent a formal notice to Mom, Dad, and Debra, giving them 45 days to vacate. It wasn't an easy decision. Part of me still saw the house as home, where I'd grown up, where Mom used to cook for us. But it wasn't home anymore. It was a weight, a reminder of betrayal. I stood firm, my resolve unshaken, knowing this was the last step to closing that chapter. Debra didn't fight it. I heard from a neighbor that she'd packed her bags within a week, leaving Mom and Dad behind without a word. She'd taken a job at a nail salon in Decatur, scraping by her dreams of handling the family in ruins. I wasn't surprised. Debra had always run when things got hard, leaving others to clean up her mess. Mom and Dad moved into a small apartment on the edge of Atlanta, paid for with what little savings they had left. They never called, never texted. Their silence was final, a confirmation they'd chosen their side long ago. I sold the house a month later. The sale went smoothly. A young couple bought it, eager to start their own story. The money, just over $300,000, felt like a lifeline. I set aside most of it for my kids, creating a scholarship fund to secure their future college dreams, opportunities I'd never had. The rest went to paying off debts and starting fresh. William and I found a new place, a modest home with a backyard for the kids. It wasn't grand, but it was ours, free from the ghosts of my past. As I unpacked boxes in our new kitchen, I thought about everything: Dad's toast, Mom's necklace, Debra's lies, the courtroom's quiet. I'd fought for justice and won, but the victory left scars. My parents' refusal to see me, to acknowledge what I'd done for them, stung in a way I couldn't shake. Yet standing there, surrounded by my kids' laughter and William's steady presence, I felt something new: freedom. I'd carried their burdens for years, but no more. I'd built my own life, my own family, my own worth. The lesson came slowly, carved from pain and choice. Self-respect is something you build yourself. No one can hand it to you. I'd spent years seeking it from Mom and Dad, from a necklace, from their approval. But it was in the fight, in standing up to Debra, in reclaiming what was mine, that I found it. The house was gone, the family fractured, but I was whole. My kids would grow up knowing their worth didn't come from anyone else's hands. And that was enough.